Welcome to the Newsmaker program. You know, a week or so back, I had a fellow on the air, James Bond. Not that James Bond. This James Bond. That James Bond is probably long gone to the great spy network in the sky. But this James Bond is very much with us, and he's got a thing called the Father-Daughter Project. I'm going to have him review what we talked about because it was fascinating, and then we're going to talk about how you raise boys, because father-daughter relationships are very special, as any father will know and any daughter will know. But I think you'll find this very helpful, whether you've got kids now or grandchildren or whatever. Stay tuned. You'll enjoy this.
Next on News Talk AM 1480, WLEA, the Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
Yeah, a week or two back, I interviewed James Bond, and I found him so fascinating. I don't do this a lot, but I found him so fascinating. I said, let's do another show, and this time we'll take a slightly different view. And I have a cheat sheet on this guy. I mean, I can tell you all his credentials, but I can't find the cheat sheet. So, James, do a little boasting about your background.
Sure. For 13 years, I ran a behavior management company and a training company. And I have extensive background in psychology and in business. And I have a son and 3 daughters. And when my middle daughter was 22, I realized that I had no relationship with her. That somehow my career and just life got in the way. And she was the quiet one. My oldest daughter is a type A. And so she was always there, and I thought, well, raising kids, the son and daughter, is pretty easy. Mm-hmm. But I realized that my middle daughter was so quiet that I really never got to know her. And so I sent her an email saying I realized that your whole life has gone by, and here you're moving away. She was moving out of town, and I really never got to know you. And she sent me an email back saying, I've been waiting my whole life to hear this.
And you cried. As I remember, you told me you cried, and I almost cried just hearing you tell the story.
Well, I was at work, and it's funny, reading an email, and tears are streaming down my face, and people are walking by and saying, are you okay? And I'm going, it's just an email from my daughter. But I wondered if other dads of daughters were as clueless about raising a daughter as I was. My son was easy. I mean, it's funny, with son, I call my son, his name is Jordan. He's in the Navy. And I say, hey, Jordan, how's it going? He says, not too bad. He says, anything doing? No, not too much. Anything happening with your life? No, everything's going great. Okay, great. I hang up, and, hey, I had a great conversation with Jordan just now. Mm-hmm. With daughters, it's totally different. It's amazing that, my daughters will tell me so much, and it's a totally different relationship. I remember I was doing soccer. This really struck me that I was doing soccer. I was coaching soccer with my daughters, and I did the baseball with my son and hockey and all that. And the girls said, "Can we scrimmage in a practice with the boys?" Girls always girls want to play boys and see if they can really whoop them. And I said, "Oh, sure." So I walk across the field and I talk to a coach of the little boys, and he said, "Yeah, sure." So I come back and I say, "Okay, girls, you guys ready?" And they said, "Sure." And I said, "Okay, let's go." And I start walking across the field, and then I realized there's no girls with me. And I turn around and look, and they're putting makeup on.
How old were these girls?
Oh, like 14. And that's where I'm realizing this is not the same as boys.
Yeah. Any father can relate to when their daughter started to put makeup on. And, it's a rite of passage, and you say, well, you don't have to do that, honey. You're beautiful anyway. Oh, I know. Now, you used a term a little while ago. We shouldn't assume everybody knows. You said your first daughter was a type A. Describe type A.
Well, type A is a person that, they tend to be dominant. I mean, we thought she'd be great as a lawyer because she is so in your face, I mean, she would take me if she was talking to me and I wasn't exactly paying attention, she almost grabbed my face and turn it sideways and say, "Dad, I'm talking to you. Come on, listen." So parenting was pretty easy for her because she made sure that she was heard, and she made sure that if something was important that she actually got feedback from it. And so from my standpoint, that was, communicating with her was easy. I didn't realize how lousy a communicator I was. I thought, especially because I ran a management company and we were working with all these companies and helping them fix relationship issues as well as business issues, that I was really with it. And it was only looking at my daughter that I realized, my middle daughter, that that I really wasn't. There were lots of things that I didn't understand about my own relationship with my daughter, and that it took work and sometimes intestinal fortitude to just go out there and do something to interact with my daughter. And just to show you how clueless I was, so as I'm doing the book, I said to my wife, I really need to spend more time with Lauren, and I had. But I said, so I need to I think I want to spend some time with her and go take her to dinner. So my wife says, that's a great idea. So anyway, a day passes, 2 days pass, a week passes, 2 weeks pass. And then my wife says, why don't you, I thought you were going to take Lauren out to dinner. I said, well, I was waiting for the right time and the schedule. I don't know, on her schedule and my schedule. And she says, just pick up the phone and call her and ask her if she wants to go out for dinner tonight. Mm-hmm. And I went, oh, duh. I didn't even think of it. And I picked up the phone and I said, hey, Lauren, do you want to go out for dinner tonight? And she said, I can't do it tonight. How about tomorrow? I said, yeah, great. Bam. I was set up. I think we make things complicated sometimes. And the good news, when I interviewed 101 fathers and daughters, I didn't really want to try to get 101, but I wanted to interview dads of daughters to find out if I was the only dad who's this clueless. And so we started advertising online and in men's groups, and in wherever we went, we'd be in schools. We just put a note up saying doing interview of fathers and daughters. And dads came forward willing to talk and started sharing with me all this stuff about themselves it's almost like it was I opened the floodgates that guys want to talk about, especially the relationship with a daughter, more than a son, because sons are so easy. We get sons. I had a 9/11 fireman who said, I was raised in a house with boys, and so for me, when I got my daughter, I suddenly realized that girls are like aliens. They look at you all the time. My son, he wanted to play ball. My daughters want to talk. It was just so different. Mm-hmm. Also, we have the issue with this guy was great, a 9/11 fireman, and he was telling me that he was a good-looking, buff guy, and he was a fireman. It's really attractive to women and everything. And now his daughter's like 12 years old, and he's freaking out. He's realizing, I know what guys want. This is my baby. And I know, because it's like my punishment for being like that is I get to worry about all these guys and what they want to, the relationships they want to have, they're going to want to have with my daughter.
This reminds me, I won't mention any local names, but there's a guy, I'm afraid he's moved on now. He went to glory. But anyway, and I think he did. I really do. Anyway, he was, let's put it this way, kind of a typical guy in the 50s, right? And he was sitting around, I can say this on the air, JC's coffee shop here, restaurant coffee shop. And somebody said, hey, we'll call him Tom. Hey, Tom, that wasn't his name, by the way. Tom, your daughter going to the prom? Yep. Are you worried about it? No, not at all. How's she getting there? He's picking her up. And you're not the least bit concerned? No. Why aren't you concerned, Tom? Because I'm going to be right in the back seat.
Not really.
And I'm sure he wasn't, but, yeah, you're right. A guy's daughter is very, very precious. Love their sons, but their daughters have their hearts, usually. Now, you said the middle daughter was the one that you did not relate with well, and she broke your heart when she said, I've been waiting all these years, she's 22, for you to finally say you want to get to know me. How are you doing with her now?
Well, I'm doing much better. I mean, I made a lot of we just went to Hawaii together, which was fantastic. Mm-hmm. She paid for my wife and me because I'm a workaholic, and said, if I don't take you guys are never going to go. And she is starting to do pretty well, and so she treated us, which was fantastic. But as guys, I was a consultant for a lot of my life, and I'm a problem solver. Tell me what's going on, I'll solve the problem. And so my daughter, we're sitting at a table, at a dinner table in a restaurant, and she starts talking about how this was a few years ago, she lost her job for a dumb reason. It had nothing to, she didn't do anything wrong. She actually did something really positive and lost her job. And everyone was really floored when somebody who heard about what happened to her hired her because they said, she's incredible. I don't know why this idiot would fire her. And so we're sitting at the table, and I start giving her advice. I start saying, hey, when something like this happens, here's what you want to do, blah, blah, blah. Well, she got all insulted or offended, and she got up and she left. And my other kids thought, wow, she was really rude. And it took me a few days to understand this, and then I suddenly struck me. I spent I was giving her advice. She didn't want advice.
She wanted you to listen.
Yeah, she wanted me to listen and to show her how wonderful she is. I knew you were going to work this out. You were so smart. You were so awesome that when people recognize how great you are, she wanted a hug and just acknowledgement. And instead, in a way, I was telling her she was stupid. Or you're so stupid. Here, let smart daddy tell you, here's how you run your life and here's what you should do. And I suddenly realized, and I became almost paralyzed with realizing my whole life was about giving her advice. And I was so busy giving her advice, I never really listened to her. I never really knew what was going on with her.
Well, you're a good man to see and therefore adjust. Not everyone can do that. We'll be back in just a minute. We're going to talk about, with this guy who knows a lot about it, James Bond. He's given up spying, and he's doing other things now. James is going to talk to us about the problems of raising boys. He said he had no problems, but I don't believe it. We'll be back in just a minute. We're back in. And James Bond, not that James Bond. This guy is a behaviorist. He's got a company. He's a workaholic, therefore he's got money, because I've never met a workaholic that didn't have money. And I wish I were a workaholic, to tell you the truth. But I'm not. Sadly, I'm not. Although I can give you a lot of reasons why that's not a good idea. Before we get to raising boys, James, you said you had 3 daughters. Now, the first one's a type A. She was really in charge. All you were doing was kind of going along, right?
Yep.
But the middle girl, what was her name again, Lauren?
So Lauren's my middle one, and my youngest one is Aaron.
And what about you and Aaron? You didn't talk about her.
Well, so I was a clueless dad all the way through, and we had 3 kids. And our youngest daughter, Lauren, was about 4 or 5 years old. And then my wife looked at me. She must have held a baby or something. And she looked at me and went, oh, you think that's going to be our last baby? And so I got this ridiculous idea that I said, yeah, well, let's have another one. And the older kids will raise her. Anyone who's ever a parent has to understand that is the stupidest idea, because they're older. They're on their way, and they've got their own lives going on. But the 5 years are a whole different generation. Aaron's 21 now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to interact with her, and I would be talking with her, and she just didn't want to talk. And so my wife says, you need to text her. And I said, but she's like 3 feet away from me. She said, you need to text her. I said, okay, so let me try. I said, hey, Aaron, how's it going? Like, what's going on in life? And she sends me these fantastic long texts talking to me about, like, here, this is going and this is going on. So I'm texting her back, and then she texts me back, and I finally figured I'd break the invisible wall. And I said, well, she's just 3 feet away. I said, so I put down my phone, and I said, hey, Aaron, this is really amazing. She said, Dad, I don't want to talk. And I'm realizing, yikes.
It is a different generation. It really and truly is, yeah. I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but it's a fact.
Right.
Now, listen, we want to talk about raising boys.
Mm-hmm.
I think any parent who's got any brains at all will look back and say, I wish I'd done this, 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 and this, or I wish I had not done this, 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 or that. You keep saying that raising boys is easier. Now, I found it to be the opposite, but tell me why, or what, rather, parents should be looking for as they raise their boys. You get them figured out, and then they're in a different stage. That's the problem. Go ahead.
Yep. Well, let me give you a tip. So my son, we live in Southern California. We moved here from Canada, from Montreal, Canada. That's where I'm from. And my son, we got into movies. My son and my oldest daughter, for a period of time between the ages of 8 and 14. And after he was finished, and he was busy all the time. It was great. It was kind of nice seeing him, meeting movie stars and stuff like that. But after he finished with the movies, at the age of 14, 15, we let him have his freedom instead of keeping him busy. The biggest mistake we made was, we didn't have him in scouts and just like in so many events that, sports and scouts and everything else. And I realized that because of that, he had an opportunity to wander and to be influenced more by friends. We didn't know who his friends always were, and he got a little bit into trouble. Now, he came back, which was really great, and we got lucky. But I recognized that if I had this to do over again with my son, boy, especially during those ages, you need to keep them so busy with so many things, even if they're complaining. At first, it helps them on so many levels. But the second thing is you know what they're doing all the time. You know who their friends are all the time. Because the worst thing that a young boy has, especially between the ages of 15, 16, 17, is free time. Because the more free time they have, the more time they have to get into trouble. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it sure does. And again, something I said...
4 boys, you said?
What's that?
Four boys,
Four boys, one girl, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And I remember when the good sister came out and said, "You got a little girl," I was shocked. I remember, I had a brother. I didn't come from a big family, sadly. I wish I had. But it was my brother and myself, 12 years different. And he was more like a father than a brother. You follow?
Right.
So he was the guy that was off in World War II, the guy that was in law school. I mean, we weren't fighting out in the backyard like my boys were. But where was I going with this? Do you remember? Anyway, she came out and said...
Keeping them busy?
No, Sister Valerian was her name. God love her. She was a wonderful gal. She came out and said, "You got a little girl." And I was totally dumbfounded. We'd had 3 boys by that. What do you mean a little girl? So I called my mother-in-law, who was a very wise lady, and I said, "Grandma, it's a girl." And she said, "Yes." And I said, "What do you do with a girl?" And she said, "You'll find out, pal." Well, I did. I did find out. They run you. You don't run them. They run you, and they're very good at it. And I wouldn't change it in a minute, Now, we both agreed that father-daughter relationships are very special. Is it also true that mothers and sons are very special, very different?
Oh, yeah, very much. But it's a very different issue with father and daughter versus mother and son. And the main reason is because females are really good communicators. Their brain is wired so that as they feel emotions, they can communicate. Guys, we have a wall that never let them see us sweat. It's like wired inside us that we're not going to show emotion. Certainly lots of emotions. Like I realized as I was interviewing these dads, because dads are guys, right, that suddenly find themselves in a world with a daughter, with a girl, that they have to mentor instead of try to pick up. And a lot of guys are afraid of women. I was really surprised as I went through the interviews because as they started explaining this, I went, "Oh, wow, I can relate to that." When I was younger, before I had my daughters, certainly my daughters are older, I was a little afraid of women too. One guy said, "I don't know the rules of engagement. With guys, I do. I know what to do and how to interact with guys. But with girls, they cry. That's not fair. They want you to listen and not try to solve the problem. But I'm wired to solve problems. They have emotional ups and downs. And, the rules of engagement are so different. A lot of guys, and this is one of the things I was really surprised by, and it took a while reading through this and listening to it for me to understand how much this applies to me, was that guys, our feelings are hurt easily, but we don't know how to explain that. And so it just...
well, if we did, we wouldn't, right? Because that's not... Duke Wayne doesn't do that, so we don't do it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, James, as always, that's only 2 times now, I've really enjoyed talking with him. And I told James Bond in the break that when he gets other things he wants to talk about to email me, because this guy is interesting, and he's out in California, so we have to pre-tape this show. Otherwise, he'd have to get up in the middle of the night out there. James, tell us about your website and the book, and also people can get a chance to look at it themselves.
Sure. It's The Secret Life of Fathers is the name of the book, and the website is thefatherdaughterproject.com. And if you go there to the fatherdaughterproject.com, we have videos of dads struggling to have the sex talk with the daughter, by the way, for example, and some of the other things. But there's some fun videos that people get to see when they come to our website, thefatherdaughterproject.com.
Thank you, James. Stay on the line a minute. And, folks, stay tuned now for more news and information. Don't forget, I'll be back at 9:30 every morning, 9:35 actually, with a show called The Coffee Break. Not like this show, but I hope you'll enjoy it anyway. Here on AM 1480, where news comes first.